Alaska. The last frontier. A place where entire towns exist hundreds of miles from the nearest road, where winter darkness lasts for months, and where thousands of square miles remain unexplored. It's a land where people vanish without explanation, where communities develop their own rules to survive, and where some places are marked on maps with warnings that locals understand, but outsiders ignore. These are 7 true accounts from Alaska's most isolated communities. Stories that local authorities tried to suppress, that residents speak about only in whispers, and that reveal something deeply wrong exists in America's northernmost state. Story 1. The Disappearance Protocol. Kivalina, 2016. Kivalina is a village of approximately 400 people on a barrier reef island in northwestern Alaska. The nearest city is 80 miles away, accessible only by plane or boat. In winter, when ice surrounds the island, the village is completely isolated for months. In February 2016, 7 residents vanished over the course of 3 weeks. What made this case extraordinary wasn't just the number of disappearances, but the village's response to them. The first to vanish was Thomas Akivgak, a 34-year-old subsistence hunter. He left his home on February 3rd to check his trapline 3 miles from the village. When he didn't return by evening, a search party went out. They found his snowmobile abandoned a mile out, engine still running, keys in the ignition. Thomas was gone. His rifle was on the ground beside the machine, unfired. His tracks led away from the snowmobile for about 50 feet, then simply ended, not faded into the snow or covered by wind, but ended, as if he'd been lifted into the air. The village organized extensive searches. After 5 days with no trace, they held a memorial service. But they also did something else, something that didn't make it into official reports. They enacted what they called the Disappearance Protocol. Village elders gathered every resident and gave specific instructions. No one goes outside alone after dark. No one responds to voices calling from beyond the village boundary. If you see someone standing motionless outside in the dark, do not acknowledge them, even if they look like someone you know. Stay inside between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., no matter what you hear. Anthropologists who later investigated found this protocol had existed in Kivalina for generations, passed down orally, adjusted and refined over decades of similar incidents. The elders wouldn't explain why the protocol existed or what it was meant to prevent. They would only say that following it kept people alive. 3 days after implementing the protocol, Sarah Yapana, age 42, disappeared. She'd gone to the community store just before closing at 8 p.m. The store was 200 yards from her home. Security footage showed her leaving the store at 8:04 p.m., walking toward her house. She never arrived. Searchers found no tracks, no signs of struggle, nothing. It was as if she'd evaporated between the store and her front door. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 more people vanished. Mark Kokiak, age 28, Jennifer and Robert Swan, both 45, a married couple who disappeared from their own living room while their children slept upstairs, Daniel Oktalik, age 19, and finally, Mary Barr, the village school teacher, age 31. All disappeared under impossible circumstances. All searches found nothing. By late February, the village was in lockdown. Residents moved in groups. No one went out after sunset, which in Arctic winter came at 3 p.m. People started reporting something else. Voices. Voices calling from the darkness beyond the village, using names of people who'd disappeared. Thomas's voice calling for help. Sarah asking someone to let her inside. The voices sounded perfect, identical to the missing persons. But residents followed the protocol. They didn't respond. They didn't even look toward the voices. Alaska state troopers investigated. Alaska state troopers investigated. They found no evidence of foul play, no signs of mass murder or serial killing, no indication anyone had left the village voluntarily. The case remains officially unsolved, but they also found something disturbing. This wasn't the first time Kivalina had experienced mass disappearances. Records showed similar incidents in 1987, 1994, 2002, and 2002, and 2009. Each time, between 5 and 9 people vanished over a period of weeks. Each time, the village enacted their protocol, and the disappearances stopped. Each time, authorities investigated and found nothing. A state trooper who worked the 2016 case, speaking on condition of anonymity, said, "There's something about that place, about the way the villagers respond to these incidents. They're not panicked. They're not surprised. It's like they expect it, like they've been preparing for it their whole lives. And that protocol they follow? I watched it work. As long as everyone followed the rules, no one else disappeared." The day after the last disappearance, the elders announced the danger had passed. They didn't explain how they knew, but they were right. No more disappearances since then. Story 2. The Children of Whittier, 2013. Whittier, Alaska, is one of the strangest towns in America. Nearly all of its 220 residents live in a single building, the Big Each Towers, a former army barracks converted into apartments. The town is accessible only through a 2.5-mile tunnel that closes at night. In winter, residents can go weeks without leaving the building. In November 2013, something entered that building with them, something that wore children's faces but wasn't human. It started with the Johansson family's daughter, Emma, age 7. On November 12th, Emma went to bed normally. The next morning, her parents found her room empty. They searched the building, checked security footage, questioned neighbors. Emma was gone, but here's what made no sense. The building has one entrance, monitored by cameras 24/7. Emma couldn't have left, yet she wasn't inside. 3 days later, Emma returned. Her father, Carl, found her standing in their apartment's hallway at 3 a.m. He called out to her, relieved. But Emma didn't respond. She just stood there, perfectly still, staring at him. Carl turned on the hall light. Emma's eyes didn't adjust to the brightness. They stayed dilated, pupils huge and black. Carl asked, "Emma, are you okay?" She smiled, but the smile was wrong, too wide, showing too many teeth, stretching her face unnaturally. Emma spoke, but her voice sounded off, like multiple voices speaking in unison with a slight delay. "I'm fine, Daddy. Can I come to your room?" Carl, terrified, woke his wife Rebecca. Up close, they could see her skin was too pale, almost translucent. Her chest wasn't rising and falling with breath. She was absolutely still, except for that smile. Rebecca asked, "Where have you been?" Emma's head tilted at an impossible angle. "I was with the others. They want to meet you. Can they come inside?" Carl locked Emma outside their bedroom and called the town's single police officer, Dan Morrison. Morrison arrived within minutes and saw Emma standing in the hallway, motionless, smiling. He tried speaking to her. She responded in that strange multi-voice. "Officer Dan, your daughter would like to see you. She's with the others. Would you like to come?" Morrison's daughter had died 3 years earlier in a drowning accident. His face went white. He radioed for backup from Anchorage, then made the decision to forcibly remove whatever was wearing Emma's appearance from the building. As Morrison approached, Emma spoke again. "You can't make us leave. We're children. You can't hurt children." Morrison grabbed her arm. It was cold, rigid, like plastic. Emma didn't struggle. She just kept smiling as Morrison carried her toward the exit. But as they reached the building's main door, other children appeared. 12 of them. ranging from ages 5 to 14, all residents of the building, all moving with that same unnatural stillness, all smiling with too many teeth. They formed a line blocking the exit. The first child, a boy named Lucas Carter, spoke. "You can't remove us. We live here. We're children. We have rights." Behind Morrison, the parents of these children were emerging from apartments, screaming, crying, demanding he put their kids down. But the parents also noticed something was wrong. Their children weren't moving correctly. They weren't breathing. Their eyes were dead. Morrison made an announcement over the building's PA system. "All residents, get in your apartments and lock your doors. Stay away from any children acting unusual. Do not let them in even if they're your own kids. Backup is coming." Then he physically pushed through the line of children, carrying Emma, and exited the building. Outside, in the freezing November air, Emma suddenly gasped, her body convulsing. Her eyes rolled back, then forward, pupils contracting normally. She looked at Morrison in terror and confusion. "Where am I? Where's my mom?" She was Emma again, fully human, no memory of the last 3 days or whatever had been controlling her. Alaska state troopers arrived with child psychologists and medical staff. One by one, the affected children were removed from the building. Each one returned to normal once outside, confused and frightened but unharmed. None remembered anything. Medical examinations found nothing unusual except one detail. All 13 children had significantly lowered body temperatures when first removed, around 85 degrees Fahrenheit. But their temperatures normalized within minutes of being outside. The building was searched extensively. They found something disturbing in the basement, in a storage area that hadn't been opened in years. Someone had drawn symbols on the walls and floor in what turned out to be blood. The symbols didn't match any known language or iconography. In the center of the symbols was a child's doll, old and decomposed, surrounded by photographs of children. Some of the photos dated back to the 1950s, when the building was an active army base. Residents identified several of the children in the photos as kids who'd lived in the building and disappeared over the decades. The investigation stalled. The symbols were documented and painted over. The doll and photos were taken as evidence and never seen again. Parents were advised to keep their children away from the basement. Life in Whittier returned to something resembling normal, but residents reported ongoing incidents. Children sleepwalking in groups. Multiple families reporting their kids standing motionless in hallways at 3 a.m. Parents finding their children in other people's apartments with no memory of how they got there. In 2015, the building's basement was sealed with concrete. No explanation was given to residents. The incidents decreased but never fully stopped. Whittier's population has dropped by 30 since 2013. With families moving away specifically because of their children's behavior. Those who remain have an unspoken agreement. Kids aren't allowed in basements or storage areas. Doors are locked at night, and if you find a child standing motionless in your hallway at 3 a.m., you call the police immediately and don't approach them. Story 3. The St. Michael Sound. 2018. St. Michael is a small village on Alaska's western coast with about 400 residents. It's known for subsistence hunting, fishing, and isolation. In March 2018, residents started hearing a sound coming from Norton Sound, the body of water adjacent to their village. The sound would become so loud and persistent that the entire village was temporarily evacuated in what authorities called a precautionary measure, but locals knew was a desperate escape. The sound started on March 8th. Residents described it as a low hum, barely audible at first, like distant machinery. It came from the direction of the frozen sound, where ice extended for miles. By March 10th, the sound had increased in volume and changed in character. It was no longer a simple hum. but something more complex, like voices singing in harmony underwater, mixing with mechanical grinding, and what some described as the sound of something enormous breathing. Village elder Margaret Adams reported the sound to state authorities on March 12th. She explained that the sound was keeping residents awake, causing headaches and nausea, and that people were starting to act strangely. Children were drawing pictures of things under the ice. Adults were having shared nightmares about drowning and darkness, and several people had started walking toward the ice at night, drawn by the sound, having to be physically restrained by family members. A team from the University of Alaska Fairbanks arrived on March 15 to investigate. They brought acoustic equipment and specialists in underwater sounds. What they recorded baffled them. The sound was real, not mass hysteria. It registered on all their equipment, but its source couldn't be determined. It wasn't coming from a specific point, but seemed to emanate from the entire frozen sound simultaneously, as if the ice itself was producing it. The frequency analysis showed something impossible. The sound contained infrasound frequencies below human hearing range, known to cause anxiety and discomfort. But it also contained ultrasound frequencies above human hearing. Humans shouldn't have been able to hear it at all, yet everyone in the village heard it clearly. More disturbing, when researchers analyzed the waveform, they found patterns that resembled speech. Not random patterns, but structured communication, repeating phrases in a language they couldn't identify. On March 17th, a resident named Tom Apangaluk disappeared. He'd gone to his ice fishing hut about a mile offshore on the frozen sound. When his son checked on him that evening, the hut was empty. Tom's fishing gear was there, his coffee still warm. But Tom was gone. His footprints led from the hut toward open water 2 miles away, but searchers couldn't follow them far because the ice was unstable. A helicopter search found no sign of him. The sound grew louder after Tom's disappearance. Residents reported it was now causing physical pain, making people vomit, causing nosebleeds. Children were covering their ears and crying. Some adults started speaking in what they described as the language of the sound, speaking words they didn't understand and couldn't remember saying. Video recorded by residents shows people in trance-like states, speaking in unison, their eyes unfocused. On March 19th, authorities made the decision to evacuate. The entire village was transported by plane to Nome, 130 miles away. The evacuation order stated environmental hazard pending investigation. Once residents were away from St. Michael, the effects stopped immediately. People returned to normal. The shared nightmares ended. No one could remember the words they'd been speaking. A military team was sent to investigate. They reported that the sound stopped on March 21st, exactly 13 days after it started. When residents were allowed to return on March 25th, everything seemed normal except for one detail. The ice over Norton Sound had developed cracks in a geometric pattern. From the air, the cracks formed what looked like words or symbols in a massive script covering square miles. The pattern was documented, then explained as natural ice fracturing due to temperature variations. But residents who flew over before the ice melted said the cracks spelled something. Multiple people independently reported seeing the same word repeated across the ice in letters a mile long. Remember? Remember what? No one knew. The pattern melted with the spring thaw. Tom Apangaluk's body was never found. The village has never fully recovered. 20 families moved away permanently. Those who remained speak about the incident reluctantly and never in detail. Village elder Margaret Adams said in 2019, "Our ancestors told stories about sounds from the deep ice. Sounds that called people to walk out into darkness. They said the sounds come every generation or two, taking someone, then disappearing. We thought they were just stories to scare children. We were wrong." Story 4. The Kaktovik Camera. 2019. Kaktovik is one of Alaska's most remote villages, located on Barter Island in the Arctic Ocean. Population 260. The village is famous for polar bear viewing, with hundreds of bears visiting annually to feed on whale carcasses. In September 2019, a wildlife photographer named David Chen installed motion-activated trail cameras around the village to capture bear behavior. What the cameras recorded instead would lead to a federal investigation and the permanent deletion of footage that multiple agencies deemed potentially destabilizing to the public. David set up 12 cameras in a 3-mile radius around Kaktovik. The cameras had night vision, heat sensors, and were designed to activate when detecting movement. Over 3 weeks, the cameras captured thousands of images of bears, foxes, and occasional humans. But 3 cameras, all positioned facing away from the village toward the Arctic Ocean, captured something else. Camera 7, positioned a mile north of the village, triggered 147 times in one night, despite no visible movement in most frames. When David reviewed the footage, he saw what looked like interference or malfunction. Dark shapes moving in and out of frame, not following natural movement patterns. Some frames showed humanoid figures standing on the ice, but they were wrong, too tall. Proportions off, moving with jerky, unnatural motion. David assumed equipment malfunction and planned to replace the camera. Camera 9, 2 miles northeast, captured clear footage of what appeared to be a person walking across the ice at 3 a.m. The figure walked in a perfectly straight line toward open water, never deviating, moving at an unnaturally steady pace. David estimated the figure walked 15 miles based on tracking it across multiple frames. It never stopped, never looked around, just walked into the darkness until it reached the water's edge and kept walking, disappearing into the Arctic Ocean. David reported this to village public safety officers, thinking someone might be suffering from hypothermia or mental distress. But no one was reported missing. No one had been out on the ice that night. The village had only 3 snowmobiles capable of reaching that area, and all were accounted for. David was told to forget what he saw. Camera 12, positioned 3 miles west, captured the most disturbing footage. Over 7 consecutive nights, it recorded the same scene. 12 figures standing in a circle on the ice, perfectly motionless, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. each night. They appeared human from a distance, wearing clothes, standing upright, but reviewing the footage frame by frame revealed problems. The figures didn't move even slightly for 2 hours. No swaying, no shifting weight, absolutely still. Their shadows in the moonlight appeared solid and normal. But when David enhanced the images, he couldn't see faces. Where faces should be, the images became blurred and distorted no matter how much he adjusted settings. On the 8th night, the cameras captured all 12 figures turning in unison to face camera 12. Despite it being a camouflaged trail camera they shouldn't have been able to see. They stood facing the camera for 17 minutes. Then all 12 walked directly toward it, maintaining their circle formation. The footage shows them approaching closer and closer until they're only feet away. The final frame before the camera shut down shows what appears to be hands reaching toward the lens. But the hands are wrong, too many fingers, joints bending in impossible directions. When David hiked out to retrieve the camera the next morning, he found it destroyed. Not damaged by bears or weather, but deliberately dismantled, with components scattered in a circle pattern around where it had been mounted. The SD card was missing. When he checked the cloud backup, the footage of the figures approaching had been deleted, but his cloud account showed the deletion had occurred at 3:47 a.m., hours before he discovered the destroyed camera, and from an IP address that traced to the middle of the Arctic Ocean. David reported everything to Alaska state troopers. They contacted the FBI, who sent agents to interview him and examine his remaining cameras and footage. David was asked to turn over all equipment and files. He was also asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. When he refused, pointing out this was his personal project, agents became insistent. They explained that the footage potentially showed classified military activities and releasing it could violate federal law. David argued that the figures weren't military. They weren't human. The agents exchanged glances but didn't comment. They confiscated all his equipment and footage, giving him a receipt but no explanation. A month later, David received compensation for his equipment, along with a legal document requiring his silence about the incident. But David had backup files the agents didn't find. He shared them with colleagues and uploaded snippets online before federal authorities had them removed. Dozens of people saved and analyzed the footage before it disappeared from the internet. The consensus among those who saw it: the figures weren't human. They weren't wildlife. They weren't natural. And they knew they were being recorded. Kaktovik residents have their own explanation. The village elder, Lloyd Najiak, said in a sealed interview that was later leaked, "We've known about them for generations. They come from under the ice. During certain times of year they're visible. Usually they stay away from the village. Usually they don't bother us. But if you record them, if you try to prove they exist, they respond." 3 people in village history tried to photograph them. All 3 disappeared. Your friend David was lucky. They only took his equipment. They could have taken him. Story 5. The Nome Blackout. 2020 Nome is one of Alaska's larger remote communities, with about 3,800 residents. It's the hub for numerous surrounding villages and has modern infrastructure including reliable power. On February 28, 2020, Nome experienced a total blackout that lasted 47 minutes. What happened during those 47 minutes remains one of Alaska's most suppressed incidents, with residents signing agreements not to discuss details and authorities insisting it was merely a technical malfunction. The power went out at exactly 8:47 p.m. This wasn't unusual. Nome occasionally experiences outages. But within minutes, residents realized this was different. Backup generators at the hospital and police station failed immediately. Personal generators wouldn't start. Car engines died. Even battery-powered flashlights and phones stopped working. Every electrical and battery-powered device in the entire town was dead. The darkness was absolute. Nome has no streetlights without power, and the overcast February night provided no moonlight. Residents described the darkness as physical, as if it had substance and weight. People inside their homes couldn't see their hands in front of their faces. Some reported the darkness felt cold beyond the normal winter temperature, a coldness that seemed to seep into bones and make breathing difficult. Then people started seeing lights outside. Not electrical lights, but something else. Multiple residents reported seeing what looked like bioluminescent shapes moving through the streets. The shapes were vaguely humanoid, glowing with a pale blue light, moving in groups of 3 or 4. They appeared to be searching for something, moving from building to building, occasionally stopping to stand still for long moments. Emergency responders tried to coordinate by running between buildings, shouting to each other. But several responders reported a disturbing phenomenon. Voices calling from empty buildings. Voices of people they knew, calling for help, asking to be let inside. When they investigated, the buildings were empty. The voices came from nowhere. At 9:12 p.m., roughly 25 minutes into the blackout, residents throughout Nome heard a sound. A low-frequency hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through buildings and the frozen ground. The hum increased in volume until people had to cover their ears. Windows shattered throughout the town. Dogs howled. Multiple witnesses described what happened next. The glowing figures converged in Nome's town square, dozens of them forming a circle. They stood motionless for approximately 10 minutes while the humming continued. Then they moved apart, walking through buildings as if walls didn't exist, spreading throughout Nome, going door to door. Many residents reported the same experience. A glowing figure appearing inside their home, passing through locked doors. The figures didn't speak or attack. They simply stood and observed, Their eyeless faces, witnesses reported the glows had no features, just blank surfaces where faces should be turning to look at each person in the home. After a minute or two, they would leave, walking through walls to the next house. At 9:34 p.m., exactly 47 minutes after the blackout began, everything powered on simultaneously. Lights blazed, generators roared to life, cars started. The town was suddenly, blindingly bright. The glowing figures vanished instantly with the return of power. The humming stopped, and Nome residents found themselves standing in their homes, often in odd positions or locations they didn't remember moving to, with no clear memory of what had just happened. But some had recorded audio on phones that had died and mysteriously still contained the recordings. The audio captured the humming, the sound of the glowing figures moving through walls, and something else. Breathing. Heavy, rhythmic breathing from multiple sources, surrounding each home, as if dozens of things had been standing outside every building, listening. Emergency services were overwhelmed with calls. The hospital treated dozens of people for panic attacks, anxiety, and shock. But they also treated several people for unexplained injuries, burns and geometric patterns on their skin, as if something had marked them. The burns weren't thermal, they were cold burns, like frostbite, but in deliberate shapes that resembled the symbols found in other Alaskan incidents. Alaska state officials arrived the next day. They interviewed residents, collected recordings, examined the power infrastructure. They announced it was a cascading technical failure, combined with mass hysteria, driven by darkness and cold. But they also required every resident who reported seeing the glowing figures to sign a statement agreeing not to discuss the incident publicly. Those who refused to sign found themselves audited by the IRS, investigated for permit violations, or experiencing sudden problems with government benefits. A Nome City Council member speaking anonymously in 2021 said, "They made it very clear that discussing the blackout was against our interests, not directly threatening but strongly suggesting that Nome's funding, our infrastructure grants, our federal support, all of it could be reconsidered if we couldn't control the narrative." They called it preventing panic, but what they really meant was, keep quiet about what you saw, or we'll make your already difficult life in Alaska even harder. The official power company report blamed a software glitch at the main substation combined with unusual atmospheric conditions affecting backup systems. But electrical engineers who reviewed the report off record said it was technically impossible. The described failures couldn't happen simultaneously, and nothing could explain why batteries and engines failed. One engineer stated, "What happened in Nome required something that could locally suppress electromagnetic function across an entire town. That technology doesn't exist, at least not publicly." Story 6. The Barrow Recording. 2017. Utqiagvik, formerly Barrow, is the northernmost American city, with about 4,400 residents, located 320 miles above the Arctic Circle. It experiences polar night from mid-November to late January, 65 days without sunrise. In December 2017, during the longest darkness, a radio operator recorded something broadcasting on emergency frequencies that would lead to federal investigation and the confiscation of all related materials. Shane Roberts worked as night operator for the local radio station, monitoring emergency bands and maintaining contact with surrounding villages. On December 19th at 2:37 a.m., he detected a broadcast on 121.5 MHz, the international emergency frequency. The signal was strong, local, but shouldn't have existed. No aircraft or ships were reported in distress, and the frequency is legally protected. Shane recorded the broadcast. It started as static, then resolved into what sounded like multiple voices speaking simultaneously in different languages. He recognized English, Russian, and Inupiaq, but there were others he couldn't identify. The voices were all saying the same phrase, slightly out of sync, creating an eerie echo effect. Shane had the recording professionally analyzed. The English phrase was, We are the ones who walked into darkness. We are the ones who didn't return. We are the ones who are still walking. Count us. Remember us. We are still here." The phrase repeated for 17 minutes, then the broadcast ended abruptly. But the analysis revealed something impossible. Where my eyes are gave by this. There's a five dead but I said and damn the number of Doria. The audio contained over 300 distinct voices. Each voice had unique characteristics: male, female, young, old, different accents, different speech patterns. But they were all saying the same words at almost the same time. The probability of 300 people synchronizing that precisely by chance. Statistically zero. They were reading from a script, or they were somehow linked. Shane reported the broadcast to FA authorities, assuming it was a prank or pirate radio. But when officials heard the recording, their response escalated rapidly. Within hours, FBI agents arrived in Utqiagvik. They confiscated Shane's recording equipment, all backup drives, and demanded access to his cloud storage. They questioned him extensively about who else had heard the broadcast or received copies of the recording. Shane had already sent a copy to a linguist colleague in Anchorage. The linguist, Dr. Patricia Morrison, analyzed the non-English portions before federal agents confiscated her copy too. She managed to identify some of the Russian phrases. "The ice remembers. We walked north until there was only white. They found us here." The Inupiaq phrases roughly translated to, "Those who went to the darkness. The winter that never ended. We cannot leave." Dr. Morrison also noticed something disturbing. Some of the voices sounded familiar. She compared them to historical audio recordings from Alaska archives. 3 voices matched people who had disappeared in Alaska between 1935 and 1967. The audio quality of the modern recording was far superior, but voice pattern analysis confirmed the matches. Somehow, the broadcast included voices of people who'd been dead or missing for 50 to 80 years. Federal investigation concluded the broadcast was a sophisticated hoax using archived audio and modern mixing technology. But Shane and Dr. Morrison both noted inconsistencies in that explanation. The broadcast was live. Not pre-recorded, it had background sounds consistent with extreme cold, wind, and movement. And the voices included people who'd never been recorded in their lifetimes. Where would the hoaxers get the voice patterns? Shane lost his job for violating FCC regulations by recording protected frequencies. Dr. Morrison found her research grant mysteriously unfunded the following year. Both were pressured to sign NDAs. The broadcast was officially dismissed, but in January 2018, during another polar night, the broadcast returned. Different radio operators in Utqiagvik picked it up, now on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The message was slightly different. "We are the ones who walked into darkness. We are the ones who didn't return. We are the ones who are still walking. Count us. Remember us. We are still here. There are 417 of us now." Authorities confiscated those recordings too, but multiple people had counted there were indeed 417 distinct voices in the second broadcast. The first broadcast in December had 300 voices. The difference? 17 people had disappeared in Alaska between December 2017 and January 2018. Officially, these were unrelated missing person cases, people lost in wilderness, snowmobile accidents, presumed drownings. But all 17 had disappeared during polar night in northern Alaska. An Inupiaq elder, Ruth Amaogak, shared a traditional story with investigators who bothered to ask. She described the Tumgut, spirit beings who walk in eternal darkness, collecting those who wander too far during polar night. She said, When the sun doesn't rise for months, when darkness covers the land completely, the boundary between our world and theirs becomes thin. They walk among us, and sometimes people walk with them, not dead, not alive, just walking in darkness forever. That's what you heard on your radios. Those aren't ghosts. Those are people who are still walking. Story 7. The Selawik Observation. 2021. Selawik is a village of about 830 people in northwest Alaska, accessible only by plane or boat. In March 2021, residents began reporting unusual observations that would culminate in the most comprehensive documentation of anomalous phenomena in modern Alaskan history, before authorities confiscated all evidence and declared the area off-limits to researchers. It started when several residents noticed dead animals appearing in perfect circles, not dead from predation or disease, but simply lying down as if they'd decided to sleep and never woke. First, it was a circle of 12 ravens, then 15 lemmings, then 7 Arctic foxes. Each circle was perfectly geometric, with animals evenly spaced, all facing inward. Wildlife biologists found no signs of poisoning, disease, or trauma. The animals had simply died simultaneously. Then residents noticed the standing figures, people or things that looked like people standing motionless on the tundra surrounding the village. They appeared at dawn and stood until sunset, never moving, always in groups of 3 or 7. Residents who approached with binoculars reported the figures looked human from a distance but wrong up close. Proportions slightly off. Movements, when they finally did move, were jerky and unnatural. And they always wore winter gear from different eras, some in modern parkas, some in clothing from the 1970s, some in historical furs. The village documented everything. Multiple residents with phones and cameras captured photos and videos. A teacher organized students to log observations systematically. A retired Army veteran set up motion cameras. Unlike previous incidents where evidence disappeared, Selawik's community decided to collect everything before authorities could intervene. Over 3 weeks, they documented 243 standing figures appearing and disappearing around their village. They documented animals forming death circles every 4 days like clockwork. They documented electronic devices malfunctioning when the figures were present. Most disturbingly, they documented residents sleepwalking in groups, walking toward the figures, having to be physically restrained and brought back to the village. On March 24, 20, residents simultaneously walked out of their homes at 3 a.m. and began walking toward the tundra where the figures stood. Family members stopped them, but all 20 had no memory of leaving their beds. They reported identical dreams, figures calling them to come join the waiting, to stand with the others until it's time. Village Council contacted every media outlet they could reach. They uploaded their documentation to multiple platforms. For 48 hours, the story spread across Alaska and reached national news. The documentation was extraordinary: clear photos, videos, multiple witness testimony, systematic observation logs. It was the most comprehensive evidence of anomalous phenomena ever collected in Alaska. Then federal authorities arrived. CDC representatives, they claimed, investigating potential environmental contaminants causing mass hallucinations. But residents noted they carried weapons and communications equipment, inconsistent with CDC work. They confiscated all documentation, all cameras, all computers. They quarantined the village for medical observation for 5 days, during which residents were interrogated individually and forced to sign statements recanting their observations. The village teacher who'd organized the documentation, Jennifer Park, refused to sign. She was arrested for interfering with a federal investigation and held for 2 weeks before being released without charges. Her teaching license was suspended. The Army veteran who'd set up motion cameras, Robert Cox, had his VA benefits frozen pending an unrelated investigation that was dropped after he signed the required statements. Media coverage ceased abruptly. Uploaded videos were removed from platforms for violating community guidelines. News articles were retracted. Within a month, it was as if the Selawik observations never happened. Official statement. Routine investigation of reported wildlife disease found no anomalies. Village residents experiencing seasonal affective disorder and shared cultural traditions misinterpreted natural phenomena. But Jennifer Park had backup files on an encrypted drive that authorities never found. Before her arrest, she'd shared them with a documentary filmmaker in Anchorage who kept them hidden. The files contain over 300 photos and 40 videos showing the standing figures, the animal death circles, and the sleepwalking residents. Analysis of the footage confirms the figures aren't human movement patterns are wrong. They cast shadows inconsistently, and in several frames they appear slightly transparent. Most disturbing is the final video, shot by Robert Cox on March 23rd, the night before authorities arrived. The video shows all 243 figures moving simultaneously for the first time, walking in perfect synchronization toward Selawik village. They walk for 12 minutes, getting closer and closer, until they're within 100 yards. Then they all stop simultaneously and turn away, walking back to their original positions. The video captures audio. The sound of hundreds of feet moving in unison, and underneath it, humming. The same sound reported in St. Michael. The same sound that drove Nome into darkness. The final frame before Cox's camera died shows all 243 figures turning in unison to face the camera. Where their faces should be, there's nothing but darkness, as if their heads contain voids. And superimposed over each figure's chest, barely visible, are names. Names of people who've disappeared in Alaska over the past century. Names that, when researched, match missing person cases spanning from 1921 to 2020. Jennifer Park lost everything: career, reputation, home. She now lives in Oregon and refuses to return to Alaska. In a 2022 interview, she stated, "They're still there. Still standing on the tundra." Alaska has areas where something else exists alongside us. Something we don't understand. Authorities know about it. They've known for decades, but they've decided it's better to suppress the truth than to admit there are things in this world that don't fit our understanding of reality. Selawik documented proof, and they buried it, just like they've buried everything else. These 7 accounts represent only what's been documented and leaked, despite suppression efforts. Alaska has thousands of square miles where strange things happen, where people vanish, where phenomena occur that resist explanation. The state has the highest missing person rate per capita in the U.S. Authorities attribute this to wilderness danger and harsh climate. But residents of remote communities know differently. They know that some places in Alaska belong to something else. They know there are rules for survival that aren't written in any official manual. And they know that the darkness, the isolation, and the vast empty spaces hide things that have been there far longer than human civilization. If you find yourself in remote Alaska, listen to the locals. Follow their protocols. Don't investigate strange sounds or lights. Don't approach figures standing motionless in the distance. Don't respond to voices calling from darkness. And if you see evidence of something impossible, something that shouldn't exist, maybe keep it to yourself. Because in Alaska, the truth isn't protected. it's suppressed, and those who insist on revealing it often find themselves becoming part of the mystery they tried to solve.